All right, 6 o'clock, so we can get started. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This is the fourth of 5 budget workshops as we prepare for a budget presentation on November 15th. Again, the idea behind these budget workshops is to have the department heads come in and basically put forth what their requests are for their budget. These budget sheets that are available today have been prepared by the finance department and the department head. The finance department has used past numbers and expenses and broken it down to its finest points before putting these numbers in, and then also in their department head requests for certain areas. And tonight's budget presentation or budget workshop is for the fire department and Fire Chief Conlon. And again, we're putting the numbers in, looking for feedback from the public and council so that I can prepare a balanced budget for November 15th for 2019. So with that said, Chief Conlon, the floor is yours.
Okay. Where would you like me to start? With the changes, the ones we're talking about increasing, or
yeah, so
how do you want to do this?
If we start at the top and work our way down, as we get to the 1001 accounts, just to give an idea, we are currently under contract with the fire union, but that contract expires at the end of this year. So we do not have any contractual increases as far as salary goes. There are some step increases. For instance, the newest hire, Anthony Halpin, when you get hired, is at a lower level because you're in the academy for most of the time. So he has a significant step increase. So if you see any increases in there, it's for those reasons. There's no salary increases. The remainder of anything in the 1001 is all contractual. Anything that's in those lines, the 3410, 1001 is all contractual, which brings us to 1002, which is overtime.
All right. So in our overtime line, we're looking to increase to $260,000 from $250,000. I believe the thought there is our issue with overtime generally is revolving around staffing. Like today, we're currently fully staffed, but if you go back in time over the last 10 to 15 years, there's not a year goes by where we're not full, where we're not short somewhere, whether it's through injured on duty, retirements, training. Just for an example, this was a relatively light year when it comes to being short-staffed, and we were short 49 days, which resulted in about $40,000 in overtime, rough numbers. So we're looking to increase by about $10,000 to a more realistic number.
At this time, I noticed that you budgeted $250 for this year, and you're at $260 already.
That is our estimate for the rest of the year.
Yeah, we're at about 185 right now. Leaves us about $65,000.
Was that three months? October, November, December? Is this as of September?
It's as of this current pay period, right?
Yep. 185.
Yeah, but this affects just like 6 weeks, I guess 6 payroll.
6 payroll left.
So 3 months of payroll is there since September.
Do you have any latitude at all about overtime? In other words, anything that's other than contractual to bring in anybody that we need to? I noticed like a lot of the overtime sheets seems like it's somebody taking a day off here and somebody swapping here and there. Is there anything you can do to run that let's say the minimum, or do you need a?
We do run at the minimum. We have a contractual minimum. We run at. The situation that arises, right? If you have a shift of 6 and everybody's on duty, there's no overtime. The first day we only allow one leave time, one person off on vacation or Kelly, so that would bring us to the minimum.
5.
That's 5. From there, the causes of overtime on a shift-by-shift basis would be personal leave or sick leave, and the shift officer can take his time whenever he chooses for his vacation time only. So those days, the PL days, the sick days, and the captain's vacation time can cause overtime. And then the rest of the overtime is through recalls, which is a result of our call law, whether it's a fire recall or an EMS recall.
Do you have that broken down yet?
What
The EMS versus fire?
EMS recalls versus fire recalls?
Yeah.
I do. So this year,
And an EMS is different than an ambulance call, or is it the same?
no, an ambulance call would be an EMS call. So a couple things cause EMS recalls. Second call, where the ambulance runs out on the second call and depletes our manpower down to usually one guy. We'll put a recall in and get guys back. Depending on the staffing, if you're working with 5 and you go 3 members in the back of an extra member in the back of the ambulance, you put a recall. EMS cover assignments is something we've done in the past, which I did away with at the beginning of this year, because there's no reason for us to do it. So basically, a cover assignment would be the town of Colony would call us and ask us to move our ambulance up to somewhere in Latham or Colony to cover them because they don't have anything. So what we do now, instead of doing that, is we cover from our station. It adds a minute or two to the response time. That's about it. So that was kind of a savings there. We get EMS mutual aid to Cohoes and Colony, very rarely to Albany. And for the most part, that's the extent of our EMS recall. It has to do with, it's always driven by a call.
Now, can Mohawk back you up at all?
Mohawk does back us up when our ambulances are depleted.
So if there's like 2 ambulances out, you call Mohawk?
In the event of a third, if the first ambulance is still out of service yet, then we have Mohawk. That doesn't happen very often. Like this year, we've had 131 second EMS calls. 131 times. We ran our second ambulance while the first one was out of service.
Resulting in 4 men coming in?
Resulting in whoever comes in. If the shift gets called back, and typically we average about 2 guys per recall. So you get 2 guys back. A lot of times you get nobody back.
That's just for 2 hours?
That's just for 2 hours. You know, the recalls went from 4 to 2 when the ambulance is in service.
Now, the fire department also has swaps. You think that's beneficial to the city? Does it save us money, or should we just do away with swaps?
Said you get tractor.
Swaps. That means you and I are on the same different shifts. I want the day off. You can come in and work for me, and then I owe you time instead of calling in sick or calling in personal day or calling in. So that probably saves.
You can look at it 2 ways.
It's beneficial for the men.
It's beneficial for the guys, absolutely it is. Last December 30th, we had 6 people on leave time. The whole shift was on. And that arguably could be because they were able to save their PL by using swaps. But swaps are something that has been in place since before you started. It's not a new thing. There are guys who utilize swaps. I would bet I can name 3 guys off the top of my head who if you added up all their swaps, you wouldn't do 24 hours. You know what I mean? Guys just don't do it.
Chief Spain, do you have swaps?
We do. I think they're counterproductive. It takes a guy out of eligibility for overtime, so if I do have an open shift, the next shift, that guy's already working 16 hours. And it takes another guy that whoever they're swapping for, I don't have him to call for overtime as well. It kind of gets in the way from a planning aspect, so 4 to 12, we come in and we want to plan something, and we're counting on 2 senior guys and 2 junior guys, and then a swap goes in place, then it kind of kills that as well. But the swaps it's an agreed upon contractual benefit that, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of leeway to get rid of. I can try to bargain it, but sometimes the bargaining price is far more than the swap itself.
I'm just looking at the numbers for overtime. In 2017, it's budgeted $270,000. It's reduced down to 260. Not reduced down, but the actual expense was 263. In 2018, we budgeted $250,000, and the estimate is about $259,000 for this, for year end. So, going by the average of what has been expensed over the last few years, $250,000 is very reasonable, more precise number.
The EMS recalls, you have to remember, those 131 second calls result in transports that generate revenue also.
Yeah, I was going to ask why there's no revenue on this.
Just the expenditure sheet that was up. There's only one revenue from the fire department.
That number,
Budgeted, 375. And we're about 60 short of that right now, so.
Now, is that budgeted in actual cash on hand? That's cash on hand, that's actual receipts, yeah.
we're at 291 out of the 375.
It's through September. September receipts posted.
Yeah, different things.
You included what, 21,000?
Yep.
How much do we have on the,
I don't know.
So we're
When we
wrong, wasn't
sent to collections, and we'll actually look at that number today. It's a few hundred thousand, but we're getting next to nothing back. Roughly 3 months they've been collected.
it? That all was 200,000?
Collect.
Collectible, it's 300,000. I can get you the exact number. But, yeah,
A lot of Medicare write-off in that, in the water number.
correct. But, to date, we received about $50,000 since they started the collection process. This is, you know, with the aged receivables, I think 5% is what the estimate was from somebody that is actually got professional handlers, but it used to be a collection. See if we don't get 5%.
I was saying that the rate of collections that we've received to date has been a few thousand on the outstanding ambulance bills. And we were hoping, well, the expectation was to get about 5% of what we sent to the collection agency for these aged receivables.
We budgeted $375,000 for the revenue for the ambulance. Looks like it will outperform that budget. We also, because it's billed in 2018, we collect all the way up until the last day of February, look back, which is the last date that we can. So we will still be taking in ambulance revenues, which is really our last bit of revenues that we take in before the year end. So that number really carries through January and February. So it's almost on a different cycle budgetarily because of when we can bring it in. Obviously, we'll get some January bills in February and for that proper year. But I believe the estimate is over $400,000 for where it is.
Now, there was an analysis that was talked about at that meeting we had originally on it. I meant to ask you, can I get a copy of it?
The department analysis for
Yes,
these? Available? Send it out tomorrow. Depends on what you know about the field. After overtime, which is the 1,002 account, 1,003 is holiday pay. Again, that is a contractual amount. I don't know if there's much there to talk about. The promotional account kept flat at $4,000.
What's it for?
Promotional account.
For promotion to lieutenant captain. uniform, badges, and any changing equipment, helmet shields.
Dr. Tallman?
Father
Tallman, I'm sorry. Father Tallman.
our chaplain, we
Yeah.
had to help for that on that.
The next is purchase of equipment, and so the chief does have some specific equipment that he's looking to purchase for this year, so.
A little background on this is this past summer from May through August, Chief Spain and I had sent our entire departments to active shooter training. The class was held in the Arsenal. It was a great opportunity to get some national level training to bring our departments up to the national standard for response to an active shooter type event. Truthfully, as far as my knowledge goes, there's only about 3 departments in the entire state that are prepared for an incident like that. Chief Spain and I have been working on it for
A few fire departments.
a few private departments. Orchard Park, out by Buffalo, Utica, Saratoga Springs, and FDNY might be the only one other than that. But anyway, this training entails kind of a change in direction for the fire department. In the past, we would not be involved in it. We would be kind of waiting on the outside. And now with this new training, we'll be moving into the scene of the incident and treating patients and taking care of the wounded. And in order to do that, we need some equipment. Ballistic vests and helmets, eye protection, and emergency care bags that contain, the right tools for the job. The tourniquets and stuff like that. This dollar amount we were talking about here, the increase would purchase 7 sets of gear for the guys, which would cover everybody who's on duty depending on the time of day. It would give us a couple of bags with the proper tourniquets and bleeding control devices and whatnot to handle these type of rolls. And then the second half of the money we're looking to earmark towards turnout gear. Our firefighting gear is starting to get older, with the increased call volume we have and with the amount of calls we're doing, we're running into gear getting ripped and damaged, and I think it's time to start replacing it. And this increase would be a step in that direction.
If I'm correct, I believe that covers 3 sets?
3 sets of turnout gear and 7 sets of tactical gear for the active shooter type incident.
There's no other questions on that. We can move into the 4,000 accounts, and these are the base expense accounts. The first one in there that has a number in it is gas, the 4012 gasoline. Again, we've talked about this at length, as the percentages being distributed properly. So there's a reduction of about $1,000 in there for fuel costs for the department. Heating and electric costs, we did increase slightly. And again, the main reason for increasing that is because rates have been increased. And so we did see a big spike in our electricity and gas costs in the winter this year, especially in the firehouse. You can picture the firehouse. The main area of the firehouse is wide open, so it's rather inefficient building for heating in that sense. So a lot of times in the colder weather, you do get a spike there, so budget a little extra money for that. Communications, that's radios and the like, and there's all the vehicles.
There's a small increase in the radios. We received these radios, I think, 3.5 years ago from the sheriff's department. PD radios, fire radios, and everybody has a radio. That increase brings that account up to the cost of one radio. It would allow us to replace a radio if we were to lose one or damage. That's the intent behind that small increase there.
Next is the maintenance of vehicles, which Chief has requested an increase from $25,000 to $30,000. And if you look at the estimate for 2018, it's $29,300, so closer to $30,000. I'm sure you got some explanation for that.
Our two frontline fire apparatus, engine one and truck one, are both getting to the engine one is 12 years old, going to be 13 years old, and truck one is going to be 10 years old. They're getting to the truck is in the midpoint of their life and the engine's on the backside. We've had a few major repairs on both of them over the last couple of years. They are getting older. Again, engine one runs on every call we go on. The backup that we use to take engine one out of service is not a vehicle that's made to run every day. It's a great spare, and it'll be a spare for a long time. But engine one is getting to the point where things are wearing out, and we're just having increased costs. On the ambulance side of things, last year, or 2 years ago, we put our new ambulance in service. At that time, our oldest ambulance was beyond the useful life of an ambulance, and our second oldest ambulance was right at the cusp of being beyond its useful life. Now it's 2 years older. Our new ambulance, which has been in service just about 2 years, is at about 25,000 miles. It runs every day. It hasn't been out of service since we put it on duty. That's had a couple of mechanical problems, very minor, but we're putting a lot of miles on it in a short amount of time. 25,000 miles in 2 years isn't a big deal in your private auto, but on an ambulance, which is dragging a big box around it, and kind of adverse conditions if you think about it, that is a lot of miles. I would like to plan for or request to purchase another ambulance with the intent of getting rid of the two backups. They're beyond, we can use them, but they're beyond really the useful life. And I think we need to plan moving forward to replace them in order to have the opportunity to extend the life of the newest one. It's getting a lot of work in the next 2 years.
But that's not in here.
That dollar amount to purchase an ambulance is not in there. Jeremy and I have had multiple conversations about it, and I think he has an idea on how we can move forward with this, but I'm putting it out there the path we need to think about traveling at this point.
Purchase of a new ambulance is about $225,000. So I don't feel that it would be proper to budget it in an annual budget. It's not a recurring cost. It would either be something that we would look to bond for the future, or we would use, and what we've done in preparing our equipment reserve is we've taken the useful life of our regular use vehicles, so which is pretty much every vehicle other than the two larger vehicles with 20-year life expectancy that Chief talked about. So our equipment reserve would be where we would purchase a vehicle of that status from when we deem the time proper to do that. I have a philosophy that we should stagger the purchase of these vehicles so that they don't go out of service in the same time frames. The life expectancy of an ambulance is 5 to 7 years. So I would say that every 3 to 4 years would be when we look to purchase a new ambulance. Since this one's only been on for 2 years, I would think that another year or so before we really need to purchase one. As the chief said, the frontline one that's out there now has a lot of miles on it, and the backups are much older than where we'd like them to be. Which again is, we purchase them nearly at the same time. Same thing happens with garbage trucks. Puts us in a bad spot when it comes to our vehicle maintenance and usage.
So we have costs of about $50,000 a year for an ambulance.
Going into the reserves?
Well, even if you depreciate the cost, right, it's a 5-year.
I think we've gone 7 years or something. I think that's the DPU on the amendments.
Yeah.
But we're talking about 5, right?
5 as far as.
Well, 5 to 7. So that's why I say every 3 to 4 years we should probably purchase one, which is 3.5 years is half the life of the vehicle. So using 7 years and the cost of roughly $210,000 to $220,000 for it, we estimate $30,000 a year per ambulance.
It's actually, it's in the analysis you'll get, Charles. I got
It is.
It's based on the folks in service at the time, the analysis is showing from prior to the ambulance service going in to the costs associated with the department prior to the ambulance service and thereafter, so.
So the two ambulances, the other two ambulances that we have are basically out of service.
The oldest one is out of service.
Is that the one that's behind the firehouse?
That's the one that's behind the firehouse. The other one is on duty, and it goes on second EMS calls, and it goes out the door if we need two at once, or the front line is getting serviced or oil change or something like that. But it's kind of to the point where running it every day is kind of counterproductive because you're just waiting to fix it. You know what I mean? It's serving its role right now, but it's not able to in my mind, as a mechanic's estimate, running it every day would be problematic. So it doesn't really give the front line a chance to sit still for a while.
After maintenance of vehicles, there's a new line that's been placed in here. This is 4041 is the equipment maintenance. Again, this is breaking things out into finer points within the fire department's budget. So the equipment maintenance basically is things that were previously in operations and supplies, the 4090 account, have been moved out. They've also been somewhat used in the purchase of equipment. So that these shared costs are now associated to specifically equipment maintenance. And there's about 6 or 7 different contracts that we have for the maintenance to this equipment. And the finance department again broke down those finest points, and that's where that $16,000 comes from.
And where did it come out of?
So it was somewhat of a shared expense, mostly through the 4090 account, and a little bit came out of the 2000 account, the equipment line. So we can get into that a little bit more when we go down to the 4090 account, but the 4090 account has always been one of those accounts that comes in well over budget. And as we've continually looked at ways to cut that back, previously before in 2016, I believe it was budgeted at $53,000, and it was about $90,000 expense. It's gone down slightly, each year. You'll see as we move down, those expenses changing. There's no questions on that. The 4042 is in there as maintenance to the fire station. We do not budget specifically for maintenance to the fire station. 4070 is life insurance. That's a contractual obligation for the firefighters' life insurance.
Just going back up to the maintenance of the fire station, you did have work done there this year.
Yep, that was through a bond issue that we did for municipal buildings. Yes, council approved the bond issue.
I know we did that, I didn't know it was a firehouse.
That firehouse was about $50,000, or that $620,000.
Was that all good?
No.
Why?
The cost associated with it didn't require bids.
We have a policy for going for quotes.
Yeah, it's over $30,000.
No, anyway, I thought we had a policy for going for quotes. We
Go with quotes, yes, bids.
Oh, yeah.
The bid is over
Did we get any
$30,000.
quotes?
Yes.
Oh, we did get quotes.
Yes. Put a quote on.
I'm okay. Have you ever seen it?
Sure.
Okay.
So again, the life insurance is contractual obligation, $2,000. Next is the 4080, which is a training. Each year it's been budgeted about $10,000, and the chief is asking for an increase here. So Chief, if you want to touch on that.
So on a yearly basis, we do training, continuing education for EMS providers, which we provide through the Center Learn Target Solutions program we have. In addition to that, you need to maintain your CPR. PALS and ACLS are for the paramedics. PALS is pediatric advanced life support. ACLS is advanced cardiac life support. We have a couple instructors on our staff who provide that training. The next two items are where I'm looking for an increase. We send our 3 arson investigators to school every year. So this dollar amount's addressing that. It's also addressing the possibility of adding a 4th investigator. We years back when the team first started, we had 3 or 4 kind of intermittent, and then we went to 4 for a little while. We've been back to 3 for a few years, and I would like to add a 4th. It just gives you more flexibility, more options. The biggest part of this increase is TECC training. That's Tactical Emergency Casualty Care, and that ties back to the active shooter training we did this summer. Tactical Emergency Casualty Care is for any EMS providers it's a 16-hour course that focuses on bleeding control and treating life-threatening wounds related to active shooter type violence, traumatic injury, explosions, stabbing, stuff like that. We currently have a couple guys who are certified, and this dollar amount right here would allow us to train 16 more guys. That would give us minimally 4 per shift, and I feel that's a good number. We've invested already into this, raising our training to the national standard, and TECC training is the national standard for medics in their teams.
I thought the police, there was a function of the police department for fire investigation.
It's a combination. Our guys are they investigate the fire per se, and the law enforcement side of it is for if you find illegal activities. That's the part of the police play. They both collect the evidence. Actually, the police are the evidence technicians, and both sides work together to investigate the fire.
And who's on the police force for that?
We have Lieutenant Morrow, who's a certified arson investigator. Ray's more of a evidence collection guy, but the comprehensive investigations are very important.
Who's on the police or the fire department?
Lieutenant Ralph, Lieutenant Strock, and firefighter Hugo. The role level 2 arson investigator. Causing arson investigator.
They're going to be trained every year?
They do. They go out to the academy in the fall, coming up next month.
And how does the state come in? The state sends somebody too, don't they?
So, depending on the size of the fire, or if there's injuries or death, the state has to come in and investigate also. And they work hand in hand with our guys and assist. They're happy to assist in any way they can. They're a resource for us to utilize.
So within that $24,750 that the chief is requesting for training, the annual training, which is done through the Target Solutions, which we have a contract with and the council approved, is about $3,000. The CPR, PALS, and ACLS annual training is $500. The sending that 4th member to arson training is about $850, and the TECC training is $20,400 for the 16.
Would be 16 guys. That would cover the 20,000 will cover tuition, backfilling the station if we need to. That being said, we're trying to figure out how we would be able to squeeze that in next year. Currently they have 3 classes scheduled that we would be able to utilize, and they're considering putting another one on due to the interest we're showing.
And out of that, the annual Target Solutions training, that's about $3,000. Annually $3,000, but that's paid for by the recertifications. New York State Department of Health gives us reimbursements for those people. So I think this year we've got about $4,000 or $5,000 of revenue, so it might not be as high next year, but over a 3-year period it covers it.
Next line is the 4090, the operational supplies and expenses. So again, as we've talked about, we've taken some things out of there. It's still budgeted at a higher number than what it was last year, but it's an actual and accurate number based on where the expenses come from. And the main driver of the budget, that $64,000, this is where PAB, Professional Ambulance Billing, is our ambulance billing company, is about $49,000 of that $64,000. So everything else that the fire department does or have expenses on, as far as operational supplies and expenses, is that extra $15,000. That's access health for drug and alcohol testing, pest control services at the firehouse, the phone, sewer costs that we have associated with it, associations with chiefs, public safety, and then miscellaneous things like calls and delalos or anything like that, smaller incidental type costs. But again, the main driver of that is the ambulance billing. When we put it together, we can break that out. And then the last line in here is the 4094. This is paramedic equipment and the medical director. $20,000, the main cost in there is the medical director through Albany Med. That's a $7,000 cost for that. The rest of it is multiple different types of medical equipment. Wanted the chief to get into exactly what those are. Sure he'd be more than able to.
What's that?
Consumables?
Consumables. One of the bigger numbers, I believe, is emergency medical. That's EMP. That's where we buy the majority of our equipment. They're typically like, I think Tommy we buy twice a year. Drug restocking at the end of the month, at the beginning of the month. If the drug expires, we return to Samaritan. We have to buy what expired. Stair recycle is disposal of medical waste. Samaritan Hospital is where we restock our drugs. We have a program with them. Physio Control, $2,600. Physio Control is our life pack monitor. So they're kind of the only name we deal with, right? There's like 2 or 3 brands, but we use Physio, and all their equipment is specific to them. So we break a wire, we have to pay for it. And that's basically what drives that cost. NYSPSP is New York State Association of the Blind. They sell us our cover gloves, our nitro gloves. We buy a case from them, or a pallet from them a couple times a year. That pretty much covers it. Then the most miscellaneous stuff, we have, bag meats or whatever from other sources.
So before we go any further, again, as we look at the budget as a whole, in 2018, the budget was $2,368,499 for the fire department. The requested 2019 budget is $2,444,920. That is a $76,000 increase, which, when looking at the tax rate, is equivalent to 1.5% increase in taxes. So again, to go back to the very beginning in September, we presented a base budget, which was just contractual obligations before we got into these, and we were looking at a 6.8% increase based on insurances and raises. We've been through budget workshops. Through the recreation workshop, there was no increase. Through highway, it was about a 0.25 increase in rate. Again, just trying to compare it so that everybody can understand what these numbers mean in total as far as the taxes go. Sanitation, due to the tipping fees, was a 2% increase. The police department's budget presentation from last week was estimated 2.7% increase, And then the fire department at $76,000 today is at 1.5%. And these are the presentations of the requests of the departments, and the feedback that we receive from these and after these will help me to put together the budget for the November 15th budget presentation.
Did you say please?
2.7. Go back and make sure that all these are correct, but I'll get everything out to the council again to show those in input. Again, when keeping in mind what it is, each point, so each 1% is equivalent to $38,000. Based on our, and again, this is the increase of the tax rate, not the tax levy. So, and when we talk about this in our budget meetings, the state wants to, when the state talks about a 2% increase, they're talking about the increase in the levy, how much money comes in from the taxes, which that's what the state worries about. Residents and the people in the city are worried about the tax rate, how much they have to pay in taxes. So in doing this exercise with the public and with the council, I always like to talk about the tax percentage, or the amount per thousand that you're paying on your taxes. That way it's more the public number, not what the state is concerned with. They're rather equivalent, very close to each other. Any other questions for the chief? Chief, anything else? I don't think so.
You want to just add the revenue, since you have it?
Yeah, so the revenue is budgeted again at $375,000. Again, I don't want to speak for the finance department, but I believe the projection is definitely higher than 375. It's over that. Coming in over budget.
395, 100.
And that's right in line with where we were last year. It's right at 400,000 last year. So in January and February, a lot of what happens is we have billables that go out through 2018, and we can only show those revenues up until February. So sometimes a lot of the revenues from 2018 can't come in until 2019. They're not paid on time, so you miss out on some of that revenue. But that's why we talk about receipts, not billables for this. And then the other one was one that Amanda had mentioned. When we talk about that $3,000 from the Target Solutions training, that's basically fully reimbursed. So we do budget $3,000 for that each year. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, depending on how many research we're in that year. But on average, we're talking about $3,000. It's $9,000 over 3 years. And those are the revenues associated directly with the fire. Well, that's it. Thank you all again. This is the 4th of 5 budget workshops. At the next budget workshop, we won't have a department head per se here for it, but it's the administrative budgets, which take in the administrative offices, general manager's office, clerk's office, finance, law department. Within finance is also purchasing and payroll, code enforcement is in there, and economic development. We'll be talking about each one of those, and in about similar fashion, there's about as many lines for all of those departments as there is for the police department and the fire department. So payroll lines and one, single or few expense lines for each of those. Believe now I can
Thank you.
Good.